Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to RosieCon Book Festival. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Diane Rogers, and I am the school librarian at Ben Davis Ninth Grade Center in Indianapolis, Indiana, and the founding member of RosieCon Book Festival. I'm very pleased that you've decided to join us today for our festival's author panel for the 2021-2022 school year about origin stories and writing graphic novels. RosieCon chooses which books and authors to invite to the festival based upon the titles each year that are on the Elliott Rosewater, Indiana High School book list. All authors and illustrators for the 25 titles are invited to participate. For various reasons, mostly scheduling conflicts, it isn't always possible for all invitees to attend. In case you didn't know, the Rosewater list is a recommended reading list of contemporary titles for Indiana teens. The list is renewed and refreshed every school year with new and exciting books and is sponsored by the Indiana Library Federation. Near the end of each school year, teens from across the state vote for their favorite book, and the winning title is given the Rosewater Award. Voting is online and is currently open. So go to rosiebookaward.com, that's ROSIE, bookaward.com, and you can vote. Voting is open through the first week of May every school year. Before I give the mic and camera over to the authors and the moderators for today, let me take a second to thank our sponsors of the festival. Money and support has been provided by the Lilly Endowment for the Arts, the Indianapolis Library Fund, and Wayne Township Schools. Without the support of these organizations, RosieCon Book Festival would not be possible, and we are in its 4th year now. Finally, enough introduction, right? Let's begin our panel. I want to introduce our moderator for today, Shelby Couch. Shelby currently works as Teen and Adult Services Librarian for the Hussey Mayfield Memorial Public Library in Zionsville, Indiana. Welcome, Shelby. Glad that you're with us today. Take it away.
Well, I would like to introduce our authors for today. We have author Garcia, and then we also have illustrator Gabrielle Picolo, and they are the authors of the Rosie nominee graphic novel, Teen Titans Raven. So if you guys want to come on here.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Gabrielle is joining us from Brazil, Sao Paulo, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time to do this. I know that personally, I've been to RosieCon before, and this award means a lot to me. And being a teen librarian, it's really important. So, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, graphic novels are not. I'm not versed in all graphic novels, but I did read the entire series in one night because it was amazing. And I'm really interested. I know it's an origin story, but I'm so interested in how you both collaborated to craft this book. Do you illustrate first, or do you write first, or how do you do that?
So Raven was my first and Gabriel's first professional graphic novel. You know, he had done fan art. You know, I read comics, but neither of us had ever, worked on a full-length graphic novel. So when DC approached me as a, established YA author, they wanted me to kind of reimagine, pick one of their heroes, reimagine them, and kind of make them more like down to earth and relatable, less of like superhero and more teen. So I decided to do the Teen Titans, and after I pitched an origin story, because I said, if you want people to come to it who haven't read graphic novels, they might not know that much about the Teen Titans, or they might have only watched like Go, which isn't really, it's not really canon. It's kind of like a kid-friendly version of Teen Titans. So I pitched origin stories. They loved the idea. And then the next step apparently is after, they pick kind of the pitch and the concept, and they have a writer, is they find an artist. So they sent me a lot of artists to look at and their samples, and I liked their work, but it's kind of like, it when you see it. And I didn't get like the feeling. So I went on Pinterest myself and I started searching, Teen Titans comics, Teen Titans art, and all this art from Gabriel started coming up on my Pinterest. And, I was like, this is exactly, because I pitched the idea of like, let's take them out of their costumes and just put them in like regular high school, and they'll still have powers, but it would be kind of like, you might not know Beast Boy is in your school because, you know, he has these powers that you can't tell. He only turns green when the powers start working. So I saw Gabriel's art, and he was doing this series called Casual Teen Titans, where the Teen Titans were in regular clothes. And it was like he was doing art for exactly what I pitched. And so it was amazing. And I showed it to DC. And Gabriel, why don't you pick up and tell them how DC approached you about doing the project?
Yeah, so I was doing Teen Titans fan art for a while, and I wanted to do work for DC. And then they contacted me, but I didn't believe it was them because I thought it was maybe too good to be true. So it took me a while. It took them a couple of tries emailing me until I finally answered them.
I saw on an article from Nerdist that you said, no, this is a prank. This isn't real.
Yeah, no way. They use like the DC logo at the end of the email. No way, it's them.
And to my understanding, you were doing this 365-day challenge, and part of your daily drawings were the Teen Titans as teens, right?
Not really. That was like my very first project. That was my first thing on social media. That was the 365 days of Doodles project was something I did on 2014, and the Teen Titans was something I did on 2017, I think. So it was different projects.
But he had posted a lot of this fan art, because once I started following the rabbit hole, it eventually led back to his Instagram, and then there was even more there. So then I saw he had this whole Instagram where there was tons of Teen Titans fan art also.
And
Right.
And you're a big fan of Beast Boy, because even your Instagram picture, I do agree with Cammie in the forwards of the book. Your hair looked just like Beast Boy's hair.
Yeah, he's by far my favorite from the Titans. I think that's.
And Gabriel looks a lot older the last year or so, but when he first started working on the book, and he was like, only like, how old were you, Gabriel? 24?
25, I think.
Yeah, so he looked a lot younger. So in the beginning, he looked a lot more like Beast Boy. Now he's starting to look a little bit closer to his age. But in the beginning, his hair was even spikier and he looked younger. So now I feel like now, Gabriel, you're like Beast Boy's older brother.
Right.
Now I have to ask, with the characters, there's so much with Teen Titans. I mean, some of them go back to comic books from 30, 40, 50 years ago. Did you have to do a lot of research to feel like you could insert yourself with these characters in the way you did?
I mean, I did. I read pretty much everything I could get my hands on, but I kept coming back to Marv Wolfman and George Perez they have their early run, because they are the creators of Raven, Starfire, and Nightwing and Cyborg. So they had this older run from like 30 some years ago, but then they had a newer graphic novel that was a kind of a collected. And then a big inspiration was also there in the early 2000s, there was an animated series. And it really like felt so teen friendly and like the kind of thing that I would have watched as a teenager. So I really gravitated also towards that, because to me, even though they were in costumes, there was more like relationship focus and dynamics between them. And that's really what Gabriel and I were interested in exploring, was making them relatable and like kind of figuring out the way they related to the world. And then, their friends in the books. And until Beast Boy Loves Raven, they don't meet yet. So we had to populate the books with other original characters because, they're not Teen Titans stories yet. They're origin stories.
I completely agree with that.
I think it's important to respect the legacy of these characters because they come from such a long time ago. But at the same time, I think the vision that I and Kenny follow is like, what do we like the most about these characters? What made us fall in love with those characters, and then apply that to our version of them.
I really felt like that because I grew up with the 2000 show. Like my husband and I own the entire series. We watch it pretty often. So I kind of love Teen Titans anyway. But I felt like you were taking those characters, because those were teenagers in that show. So I really felt like this was taking that, but to a next level. I mean, I know in the shows, if I remember right, Beast Boy kind of infer like that he liked Raven, but she was so much more of a darker character. And I really like how you gave her so much more personality than I think that show might have. Like, I don't think they delved deep into her.
That's kind of how we both felt, because we were both fans of the show and of the characters. But we understand, like, if you're, if you're fighting like, Trigon and evil and stuff the entire show, there's not a lot of time for like, making friends or, having like kind of, some identity issues. So we wanted to like give them more time to have like the regular problems that teenagers have.
Even the regular stuff, like what do they like to eat? What are they doing on their free time? That kind of stuff, I think it's really fun to know about a character.
Well, and even including new characters, like with her foster sister Max, that was a great character, especially with her powers.
She was super fun because that's kind of like how I knew Gabriel and I were gonna, I've collaborated with a lot of people, and a lot of times in collaborations, like there's sometimes you just click with someone and it's very, Margie and I were like that with Beautiful Creatures. It's just kind of, you can make something really magical. And when we were working on Max, like I knew he and I had this shared sensibility, because I just kind of, had this one little character description. Like there wasn't that much about her, but I talked through kind of like how I envisioned her. And then he started saying, okay, well, I'm going to send you like some hairstyles and some outfits, and I'm going to draw like a face. And it was like everything he sent me, it was more like picking my favorites. It was like everything was like exactly the way I imagined her. And then it was more about like, well, what's the perfect jacket or like the perfect hair? But he like, it was kind of like we have the same vision for the characters. And I think that we both genuinely love the characters in this show and the comics. Like, so like Gabriel said, we don't want to like destroy them and make our own versions. We just want to make like a more layered version of the great characters that are already in existence.
Right. What can we add creatively to those characters? I think that's what we do.
And Gabriel, so it sounds like Cammie wrote all of the dialogue and things like that and the story part, and then it was your job to add illustrations to that.
Right.
So how does that process work? Is it kind of like where you write up something and you share it, or I can't imagine seeing somebody's words and then trying to add imagery to it.
Usually when Cammie is like developing the plot, we have a brief conversation before she actually does the script, so that we can agree on what's gonna happen, like the biggest how do you say story beats? I think that's the word, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can agree on that. And then when I receive the actual script, it's interesting because a comic book script is something like only the artist is gonna read that in a way. So Cam is giving me instructions on how she imagined the scene in her head, and I'm trying to draw that to put that on paper. So it's a really fun process, I think.
It's cool though, because sometimes like I get it back. I mean, most of the time, and it's like even cooler than I pictured in my head. Because
nice.
Like it's very interesting because like generally when you write a regular prose novel, I write the words and my editor gives me notes, but it's like I know what's going to be in that book because I make notes. I agree with her on exactly what's going to be my editor's a woman in that book. And then like the book is cool, but I knew what was going to be in it. I get a printout of the pages, but with Gabriel, I send in this script. And then all of a sudden it'll be like, well, there's, 10 new inks to look at or whatever. And it is like being a reader for the first time because I don't really 100% know what I'm going to get, and even if I get the layout, it doesn't have all the expressions and like the nuance. And he'll put stuff in like, there's one scene where Beast Boy's going in the fridge, to like get food. And, you can see in the whole fridge and he's getting like oat milk and all this cool stuff. And so it's also like a treat for me because I get to be a fan and a reader also, and which is not the same. When I write my prose novels, it's like I know exactly what's going to be in them when that book comes out.
I think that's something that I will never get tired. Why I will never get tired from comics, because there's so many ways to show like the same page, the same script. I can show that in like maybe 3 different ways. Of course, I have to be quicker than that. I have to be like more I don't have as much time to explore a lot of ways to show the same thing because there's too many pages on the book. But that's what's interesting about it. I can just keep showing the same page in different ways.
Well, I think even the way you did some of the different things about their powers, like when I was reading the scene where Beast Boy changed and it like the green bear's there and then it's like a progression, I thought that was an excellent way to show his powers.
That was
really
the
fun
most
too. I love
challenging
that
thing. His powers were the most challenging thing for us because that was an example of how we 100% had to collaborate from the beginning. Because I
Right.
called Gabriel and I was like, you know, he can't be green all the time. He has to be able to go to regular school and hide his powers. So, and his powers he doesn't make full transformations at the beginning. So I'm like, how the heck are we going to show the reader that what's going on in his body so we understand like kind of that fight or flight and adrenaline triggers him, and how are we going to show like that it's happening. I had the idea of like showing kind of an image of the animal he was going to change into behind him, but Gabriel was like, what if his eyes turn green? What if we show the way it's going on in his body? What if he's kind of emulating the poses of the animals? So it was like this cool collaboration where like I couldn't have done it without Gabriel at the script stage, I don't think. Like I needed him to talk it through with me so that I
Right.
could because otherwise I couldn't describe to him what to draw. And it was like through our conversation, we kind of did a few versions and then eventually we got to like the perfect one and we were both like, this is it.
Right.
I can very much tell from the books how your illustrations match with the words to bring it to life. I really love your use of color scheme too. I felt like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like that was one of the key points you were using was the color schemes to make the different things appear. Because some panels would be black and white, and then there'd be this one green thing or this one purple thing. Do you
want to talk about the way especially from Raven to Beast Boy, kind of like the way you envisioned, because Gabriel had very strong feelings about the color and the way he kind of envisioned it helping to tell the story?
That'd be great.
Yeah. During Teen Titans Raven, we had this idea of making everything kind of like black and white, kind of gray, and then some key elements would have a splash of color. That really worked well on Raven, but we couldn't do the same thing on Beast Boy because of Beast Boy's skin color, because Raven was almost white, almost the same white as the paper. But Beast Boy, he has brown skin. So he was basically full color. And if we only had Beast Boy full color, then the rest of the book was black and white, it looked off. It looked like it was like Ghost or something. So we had to add more colors on Beast Boy, but we wanted to make it feel like cohesive in a way. So we follow this palette that you can see on the book, that it's kind of green, kind of teal, some shades of blue. That was really tricky. We got to pick every color on the book.
Yeah, we spent like a week just looking at colors and making a palette. And Gabriel would, Gabriel would be like, no, that one's too green. That's too much green. We need a little bit more teal. And, it would, but he was right, and he would say like, and we need a color, between blue and teal. And so it was this whole process of finding, it was almost like, painting some amazing, mural or something, like where we had to come up with all the colors.
It's tough because you're always thinking about the experience that the reader is going to have throughout the whole book. You want it to be something consistent, something that makes sense as a full book, not as just one single illustration, just one single page. So that's really tough to think about such a big project.
Now, do you think it'll become easier as you bring in more characters? Because, of course, Robin has red and Cyborg is blue and Starfire is usually like purples or greens.
Beast Boy Loves Raven, I felt like was way easier in the color than Beast Boy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And just because like also it was weird, but like the teals and the greens in Beast Boy worked really well with the purples from Raven. So like in a way, I think it's always, it just depends on the color scheme, because it's like, if you have one wild card color, you have to, Gabriel's really good where he'll be like, that's like a random color. We need a color between to,
Right.
like to kind of blend.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Well, because purple and green are complementary, so that did help out a little
Exactly.
bit.
Like,
Exactly.
yes.
I'm curious about another thing in your book. So I noticed these things because it's part of what I do for my job, is that I was really impressed and blown away by how diverse all your characters were, but you had characters with disabilities. Like, I felt like you made a priority to make sure this book was inclusive and this whole
Yeah.
series was inclusive. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, we did. That was one reason why there were other books in the line that only had like one or two colors. But with Raven, one of the things I insisted on early on, I was a teacher for 17 years and I taught elementary and teenagers, and diversity is really important to me. My kids are biracial. And I taught in very racially diverse areas at the beginning of my career. So, and also, Gabriel's Latinx, he's Brazilian, he comes from a country, it's very diverse. And I wanted kids, I really believe that it is very hard to envision, to not, if you don't see yourself in a book, you don't feel like you are counted. You don't feel like you're part of the world's stories. And I really wanted all different kinds of teens all over the world, especially because of, the reach of comics and beautiful creatures in a lot of countries. I wanted all different kinds of teens to read the book and feel like there was someone who looked like them. So we spent a lot of time on skin colors, trying to, have different ranges of people with brown skin, different ranges of people who had, more olive skin. And then I am invisibly disabled, but now I'm actually becoming more, it wasn't at the time, but now as I'm getting older, I am, you can see it. I have to wear a brace and I have a cane right now. I'm waiting to have surgery. But it was really important to me that, I feel like disabilities are often overlooked. We even have a kid in there, we have kids with vitiligo. Like, I really wanted to show that there's all these different kinds of beauty and all these, we all look very different, and that's okay. And Gabriel was very, like, when I said that, he was like, yes. And I didn't even say it sometimes. Like, I'd be like, I just want to have some, some kids with disabilities. And I didn't even have to put in the script. He would just, like, there would be a girl in a wheelchair at the lunchroom. He would put the things I could, once I started saying to him, like, let's make sure we see some, same-sex couples. It's like he would just pepper them into the book really naturally.
Yeah, it became natural later. Yeah, exactly.
And I felt that I noticed it, but it wasn't in my face. It was there. And at first it clicked with me as I was reading. I was like, there's a lot of really diverse characters in here. And even someone with dyslexia, because as a teen librarian, one thing I struggle with is finding books that have the, particular disabilities. And dyslexia, unfortunately, is one of the few things that there really aren't that many appropriate books.
Yeah. My daughter's dyslexic. And my daughter now goes to there's very few of them, but there are a couple schools in the country that specialize in dyslexia. And my daughter goes to one of those high schools. And,
Exactly.
But also as a teacher, I feel like Gabriel's art is so mesmerizing that it's almost like, I feel like I can trick kids that might not normally like to read into reading these books. And as a teacher, that I like that. So my thought is if I know that reluctant readers or a student who might not normally see themselves as a reader is going to be like, I just have to read this book because it looks so cool. I want them to see people like them also. And I want them to see them, when you have dyslexia and you're young, at least for my daughter and her friends, it's very hard to see yourself sometimes as smart or as like, one day I'm going to be really successful in school. So I also wanted to show like an older teen like Tank, who is, an athlete and, popular and does well in school and feels smart, and see kind of that, like, they're, you can have dyslexia and it can be challenging, but you can also, like, it can get easier too. And you can get, support, and you're good. You're just as smart as everyone else, because I think that I think graphic novels are a unique way to help kids process the things that are hard for them in life in a way that novels don't do because of the visuals. Identity, being self-conscious about your body, things like that. I feel like graphic novels sneak up on you, and help.
I would agree. These engaged me in an entirely different way. And so I can only imagine how my teens would feel reading this, especially seeing a character like Raven, who maybe they, watch the shows, maybe they didn't. The times have changed, but I feel like Raven showed more of her insecurities in this than maybe the shows put out there. And teens have insecurities all the time, whether they show them or not. So I thought that was a great way to do that.
And I think that's how good origin stories are, because we are showing the characters still developing, still finding their own voice, their own superpowers. They are not there yet. Like, she doesn't wear a full costume. She doesn't have full control of her powers, stuff like that.
And Gabriel, I'm curious, so when I was reading some articles about you, because I did my research, that I read that in Brazil, for you, it was really hard because graphic novels and illustration and artwork aren't necessarily big jobs there, or part of the job market. And so it was hard for you
Definitely.
at first.
We just don't have an industry here. We don't have art schools. It's very, very different from the US. So that's why I relied a lot on social media to put my work out there, to get clients, to show my stuff to the world, because I don't have any fancy contacts. I probably never will get them, because I can afford art school living in Brazil. So yeah, I think that's and that really paid off, because that's how Kemi found my work. That's how DC found my work when I was posting. Social media is basically what put my work out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a lot of I have some unannounced projects, but even I did a Wonder Woman. It's a Lori Hall Sanderson edited an anthology, Wonderful Women of History, which is kind of biographies of more recent kind of important women and young women in the world. And my artist Excel is a Mexican comic artist, and she never, she had never had work. She didn't have, she didn't have a professional, quote unquote portfolio full of, Marvel and DC work. But, my editor is always on, Twitter and different social media platforms, following hashtags and looking for artists. And she found her, and, that's how she got her first job. And I have other, I have a whole secret file of, like, every time I see an artist or someone on Twitter or Instagram that I like, or a colorist or something we might work with, I like take a screenshot, and I have like a little file where I just save them all. But that's like where I find people now. And at my age, because I'm a lot older than Gabriel, that wasn't normal for me, because social media wasn't as visual as it is now. There was no Instagram, when I started out. But it's like now watching who Gabriel follows and tweets and stuff. It's like now I see there's like this whole world where you can find all these artists and different creatives online, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
Gabriel, for you, I can't imagine how incredibly empowering it must have felt to have a company. I mean, I know for you, it was a really hard startup. Like you said, you had to use social media. So for a company and something as big as DC to contact you, must have felt amazing.
That was 100% my dream job, my dream company to work with, and then it finally came true. It's like I'm still starstruck.
I
think I would be, and I have no drawing talent at all.
Me neither. Sometimes Gabriel will be like, where do you see them in the classroom? And I have to like take a screenshot and send him a picture that I draw, where it'll be like squares for desks and like circles to represent the people. Like, they're so bad. And when I tell him, I'm like, Gabriel, I'm really not good at drawing. Like, I don't think he understood like that I was not kidding at all.
It's
like,
funny when I try to explain.
Go ahead.
It's funny when I try to explain to my parents what I do, because they don't understand anything about comics. And then I say, hey, do you know the company that does Wonder Woman, Superman? I work for them. And they're like, no way, you don't work for them.
Gabriel, what did they say, like, when like Raven finally came out as a book and you like took it to show them? Like, what did they say then? Did they freak out?
No, because they don't understand it enough. Like, they think I printed myself.
Oh.
Well, like you said,
They don't have
it-
they don't have the dimension because they just don't follow comics at all.
Right. They don't understand that it's in like comic book stores and bookstores all over the place.
No, they just say, beautiful drawing. That's nice. And that's all.
I could really see that though, because the one thing about Teen Titans is they're not ever scoping like, Captain America or Wonder Woman. They're not ever scoping
true.
characters. So if somebody really didn't know anything about them, they really wouldn't know anything about them.
Yeah,
That's true.
especially like if you don't even have comic book stores or like, weekly comics, because Gabriel was saying they'll get some graphic novels and stuff, but they can't get the weeklies because there's no industry there. So like if you've never been in
no
like
way
a
you can get weekly.
yeah, and like when he came, for Raven, we went on tour and he came and stayed with me and my family, with my husband and my kids before we left. And we took him to Third Eye, which is my local comic store, which is actually a very big comic store. And he was like, he couldn't believe how big it was.
Right. And it just has so much stuff, like stuff that I follow on social media. Like I usually follow a lot of artists, and they show when they're doing something like variant covers or covers of the weekly that just came out. And then I saw that printed on the store. That was the first for me.
So Gabriel, is there anywhere close to you that you can go in and find your graphic novels on the shelves to purchase?
Yes, but it's because it's a graphic novel. Like we only get the omnibus and the like the compilation. If you're talking about comics, regular comics, we only get a compilation on their omnibus or stuff like that. But my books, they got translated to Brazilian Portuguese, and you can find them in stores. Yeah.
Okay, good. So you can say no. No. You can go here. You can buy my book. It exists.
Definitely. Yes.
It's
'Cause
in a
here
lot
we
of
can-
languages. Like
Yeah.
Raven's in a lot of languages already, and even the countries that don't have it yet, like they will write us on social media and be like, where can I order it international? Like sometimes even if they can't read in English, like if they know their country's not going to get it for a year, they'll order it internationally because, the goal of comics really should be that you can tell a lot of a story just from the art. Like the art is part of the storytelling, and they might not get all the nuances if they can't read in English, but I feel like, one of the things that I try to do when I'm writing is to give Gabriel space to like be able to show the story visually.
And for you both, I know Cami being a young adult author, and obviously you have 2 teenage children, that teens are important to you. Gabriel, did you, when you signed on for this project, did it matter to you that these are geared towards teens? Is that an age group that you're focused on, or do you do art for all ages?
I usually do art for all ages. Yes. It kind of I understood the audience when we did the tour, the tour for Raven. That was when I first like, oh, okay, I'm doing books for this age.
Yeah, because like hundreds of people came to some of the events, and it's like then he could actually see who the readers are. I mean, and
Exactly.
obviously there's adults and different people who read the books too, but we did Comic-Con in San Diego. Like that's when, it's like it is really different to meet your readers face to face and see them.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been a very interesting experience for you guys, because Cami, you already have a very decent following of people. I mean, I've read Beautiful Creatures and I love it. And so you already had an established group of readers, but for Gabriel, this was your first project, right? Like this is your first published project.
It was different too, though, because I got different people for this. Like it was interesting because some of my, Beautiful Creatures readers, a lot of them are adults now. So, and the thing that surprised me was that there's so many fans of the animated series and so many fans of these characters. Like some of those people had no idea I had other books. Like they were just there for Teen Titans and this book,
Right.
and if I do conventions, and sometimes when I'm at my table, Comic Sketch Art has, my books up, and people will come and I'll sign the Titans books and they'll be like, what are these? I'm like, oh, these are my other books. So like, we didn't know you had other books. So,
And it's
it was interesting to me to see how graphic novels, like people relate to them in a really different way than they do. You get people that might not normally even be readers, that don't
exactly.
see themselves as readers.
Yeah, and they are a very passionate audience. They are willing to wait a lot of time on a line, and they come in cosplays. It's really fun.
I can only like for me, I can only imagine how fun that is because we in Indianapolis, we have Gen Con. So everybody does the cosplaying, and my niece loves Zelda, so she's always wearing costumes and things, and she begged my brother-in-law to take her out of school for it and things like that. So I can't even imagine how amazing that must have been to see people coming for these characters to see you.
The coolest thing was that someone in LA at the Grove cosplayed Max and looked just like her. And that was the coolest thing because that was like a character we made. And
yeah,
Gabriel freaked out. I mean, she looked just like his drawing, like her hair and her t-shirt.
I recognized her instantly on the line. That was so cool.
Now, I know that Robin is the next one. Are you guys currently working on that one?
So I finished before Gabriel. Gabriel's still doing Robin. So it takes me obviously less time than him, which is part of the challenge because for me, he works on these, his whole life all the time. And I do other things. So one of the things for me is like always trying to make the next one have like, a cool setting or something new for him to, be excited about. And he's still drawing Robin, and then we can't say what it is, but we just found out, that we're continuing, and I will start writing the next script probably in April or May, which is very exciting because we know like DC likes the books, but it's different when they call it green light, when they're like, yes, it's happening, clear your schedules. And that's exciting for us because readers are always asking us, and a lot of them know we'll just say, we can't tell you what it is, but they at least like to hear there's a next one.
Yeah.
And so Gabriel, so you're still currently working on illustrating Robin right now?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And when do you guys hope for that to?
Sorry?
When do you guys hope for that to hit the stores or?
Oh, that's going to be out. It's in the back already. That comes out. We don't know the exact month, but it's going to be spring of 2023. So we don't know the exact month yet. They'll probably tell us, a little bit, like probably usually by like 7-8 months out, 6 maybe. I'm thinking this spring they'll probably tell us exactly what month. But I mean, Gabriel works on them. It's like 11 months, and then he gets like a month break, and that's like he's working on these for such a long time, and the art just takes so much more work, and then he has to look at the colors, and he has to like go back and tweak things if he doesn't like them.
It always amazes me how long it takes. It's a lot of drawing. It's a lot.
And it kills me because people read them so fast. The only thing
they read it in like 30 minutes.
The only thing that's cool about it though is I find they tell me that they do read them like over and over multiple times. So that makes me happy because they read them over and over, but that's the nature of comics. The artist is pulling, like they're doing so much of the work because no matter how great my script is, it's always going to take me way less time to write words than it's going to take Gabriel to, turn all that into gorgeous art.
And Gabriel, do you illustrate it? Like, do you have to do several rewrites and redrawings, or do you send it to someone who brings it back, or?
I usually have to turn them in to my editor, and she's going to tell me if I have to tweak anything, but it's usually small stuff, like stuff that takes me minutes to fix.
Yeah, he doesn't have to redraw usually.
Yeah, really that's the exception if it happens.
Yeah. In Raven, we had to a little bit in the beginning, just like I had to rewrite more because both of us were like figuring it out. But now, like
that was the only time that happened.
Yeah. But even like once we got past like the first 40 pages, like it would be like, oh, can you make her, look more scared? And he'd have to change like a mouth or something. Or can you add, her, a phone or a coffee cup on the table, but it's not like, I mean, Gabriel like really gets it the first time. Like he really knows how it's supposed to look. Usually if there's redrawing, it's because of him. Because he's like, I want to do something else.
I've been drawing a Cami's script for a while now, so it became easy to understand like the tone and what she's expecting, what she envisioned. It became easy.
And sometimes like it's cool because he'll have ideas. Like I'll have the
Yeah.
script and it will say something and he'll like message me and say like, I have a different idea for the, what it should look like. What if they're doing this? Because like when he reads the script and he sees what I'm going for, he'll be like, what if they're in the car instead? Or what if they're doing this? And, he knows the characters so well. And that's the fun part too, is, before we started Beast Boy, I was like, we talked about the script. I also asked him like, what kind of animals have you never gotten to draw that you like to draw? And, it's like Brian Michael Bendis, who, created the Spider-Verse and a million, Miles Morales and a million other things, has this book about writing comics. And I've, now we've both gotten to meet him also. And he says that a script is like a love letter to your artist. You're basically writing for the only person you're writing the script for is your artist, so that they can get in your head and they can understand what you're trying to do. And then they're the ones who make it happen, not me. You know what I mean? Like I am telling Gabriel like this secret story, and then Gabriel is the one who's bringing it to life.
Makes a ton of sense.
So Gabriel, then it sounds like whatever you turn in is pretty much what it is. How many times do you yourself rewrite them several times and redraw them till you get to a final product?
When I usually when I have these ideas that Kenny mentioned, it's at the very start of the page before I get to draw everything, so I don't have to redraw the page. And then if it works, like I run the idea I show it to her, and then if she approves, I'll just finish the page like usual.
The thing he experiments with a lot with are the covers. He comes up with multiple cover concepts before, and even like if we're like, Beast Boy and Raven are going to be on the front and they're going to be taking a selfie, he'll still send like multiple.
There's a ton of ways to show that. And I will try to show them all.
Yep. So that I feel like is the part, like he's a real perfectionist. And also when he's designing the characters, like he'll send me, here's 3 jackets for Damien. Here's this tool belt. Here's this batarang, and like, I feel like for Gabriel, he's like me. For me, when I'm doing the pitch and the concept, that's where I'm playing around. Once I'm writing the script, like I know the characters. So I feel like he does all this experimenting in the beginning. And then when he gets down to drawing, he's like, it's almost like natural for him.
I totally agree. I don't have to think about stuff when I'm in the middle of the project. I just want to go for it.
Because you know what Max looks like and what Robin or Damien looks like.
Yeah, like in Raven, he drew Tommy, he drew Max, he drew Slade, everybody before we started. In Beast Boy, Stella, Tank, like all these, he drew all those characters before we ever did a page. So like I knew exactly what they looked like. What
they wear, like what kind of stuff they wear, so I don't have to take a lot of time to make up some clothing in the middle of the book.
Yeah, Gabriel makes like a little fashion thing where if
wardrobe.
If people get the there's exclusive editions of Beast Boy Loves Raven. One was for Walmart and one was for Barnes and Noble, and it was cool because in the back they're different, each of them, but one of them has character designs, and you got to see all these like different outfits that he planned for Raven. But that's what he does. He will draw them and then he'll draw like, a couple different shirts or a couple different outfits. And then it's kind of like, I know at some point they're going to wear that, but I might not know when.
So for you guys, it sounds like you guys are really good at taking one person does one thing, sends it off, and the other one works off of each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That is so amazing.
And I think that's the difference is some people like the writer writes a script and then they're out and they just send it to the artist. The artist doesn't talk to the writer. But I feel like our magic is that we are really a team, and like we go back and forth on things. And for
Mhm.
sometimes, I mean, Gabriel will draw for months and I might not ever have one note, but I still am looking at the pages, like telling him how much I love them. And I feel like all that work we do at the beginning when we're coming up with the characters, and like even in Beast Boy Loves Raven, like they go to an island off of Georgia, and Gabriel will send me like pallets for the beach, and here's what the house is going to look like, and all that stuff that we do, and that back and forth. I feel like it just creates like this shared world that we're both in, and then each person can do their thing in the world, and we don't have to check in that much or stop while we're in the middle of something, like he can just keep drawing.
Well, and it sounds to me too, like, even though this is a graphic novel and we're adding in that extra layer of illustration, a lot of your processes are the same processes for writing prose too. Like you don't start writing your books usually until you know your character, their interests and their disinterests. And
Yeah, I'm not a pantser, so I don't like some people will start writing prose novels and they discover the story or the characters while they're writing. I learn more about my characters when I'm writing, but I plot. I have an outline, I have a beat sheet, I know about my characters. So for me, this was very natural because it's similar. I think if I didn't kind of do that, it would be harder, because you definitely can't like wing it when you have an artist. Like your artist is relying on Gabriel's relying, and not just Gabriel, like the letterer, everyone is relying on me to give them the thing. And if I keep changing my mind or changing things, like luckily, I mean, my editor wouldn't let me do that. But even if I tried to, that would just be all this work for everybody else, like having to redo things or figure out what I'm trying to think of. So I try to do all that work at the beginning. And then my job is like, oh, well, I want to do something else. Now I have to figure out how to do that with what I've already told Gabriel is going to happen or what I've already set up. It's not like I told him to spend all this time developing the beach, but now I decided we're going to be on a mountain skiing. Like it doesn't work like that. I have to readjust so that I am consistent with what I've told him, because he spends so much more time drawing than I have to spend writing. So it's not fair to kind of come in and be like, oh, forget what I said. Now we're going to do this. I have to decide and then commit and stick to it. Even if it's sometimes my decisions, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hard. I should have thought of something else. But I have to, you know what I mean? I have to like, just like Gabriel gets, has hard pages. I have to like figure it out and make it work.
so that pre-work is so vital, and doing all of that hard work beforehand.
Yeah, it's a pipeline of people to work on the project. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, for both of you being here, one thing that's really valuable that I think you both bring to the table is a unique perspective on how you got started and what it takes to be in this world. So for both of you, if you had advice for young adults or teens that are trying to figure their lives out and they might have interest in this, what would you tell them?
Gabriel, what's your young artist advice for teenagers who might want to be comic artists?
Be very passionate about what you're doing, and because it shows. If you're drawing stuff that you really appreciate, that you really like, you will have a creative spin on it, and it will show to people that you really like that stuff. I was always afraid of drawing fan art because it might not be something as good as something original. But with time, I understood that, hey, I like to play on other people's creative sandboxes. And I excel at it because I like to show my own little spin on something that already exists. And that really works for me, because then I got to draw the characters that I was drawing fan art of. So I think that's my main advice. Like, draw the stuff that you like, and don't let anyone say that that's wrong.
Right. Like a lot of people would say there's no point in drawing fan art. You're not going to get a job from that. But that is obviously not true.
That you have to draw for portfolio stuff only. Whatever you draw is for portfolio. So it's counting as portfolio stuff. It shows what you can do, what you like to do. So you don't have to be on that mindset.
And Gabriel, let me ask you this on top of that, because
Mhm.
I think that now my husband went to art school. I did not, but he really struggled because when he was younger, he did a lot of drawing with a pencil and a piece of paper. But things have changed so much as far as software. Are there things that you can give advice on, like drawing or tools and tips using technology?
One drawing software that I really like. It's a very basic one. It's the one that I learned to draw and I use it to this day. It's called Paint to Sci, which is way easier than Photoshop because Photoshop's like the industry standard. There are new alternatives. Like if you have an iPad, you can use Procreate. Clip Studio is a really, really nice software for artists because they're always updating and you only have to pay for it once. Photoshop's pretty aggressive. You have to pay like a monthly,
Yeah.
yearly subscription. So I don't think it's worth it nowadays. But yeah, I would really recommend Paint to the Side because it's a really easy software to get used to.
And do you do most of your work in the software, or do you still use pencil and paper?
No. I do basically 100% of my work digitally, just because it's easier to send to a client and to fix, and it's cheaper too. Because with traditional art, you have to keep buying art supplies, and with digital art, you just pay for the license of the software that you're using, and you're good to go.
Okay.
And you can take it around everywhere. Like when Gabriel comes to the US to like
Yeah.
go on tour, he just brings his tablet.
Exactly.
That
So
makes sense.
my biggest advice for artists, because I try to work with like newer, younger artists to give them kind of like a opportunity, is if you want to do comics, one of the things, many things that made Gabriel's really stand out to DC, not, to me, it was just like, I just loved it. But they loved the fact that like his work, has backgrounds. I see a lot of artists that I fall in love with their work, but all they have on their Instagram is portraits of like a character. There's no background. They're not, they're just, it's like a good girl's face or a character standing next to another character. In order to get jobs in comics, you have to show that you can do backgrounds. You can do characters in action doing things. So if people go to look at Gabriel's Instagram and they look at his Teen Titans stuff, there's almost no scenes where they're just like Beast Boy is standing on a white background. They're all like Beast Boy's grocery shopping, Beast Boy's dancing, Beast Boy's eating pizza, he's playing video games, and you see the room he's in. So if you want to do comics, you need to have some art either on your, online, if you have a website, or if you're, most artists, their website is their Instagram. So you need to have some backgrounds, because when I pitch an artist, the first thing they'll say to me is they just do portraits. There's nothing on their Instagram except portraits. So that's, it sucks because there's people that I would love to see get work, but unless it's just like drawing a poster with one figure on it, it doesn't show that they can do that. So I think that's important.
Right.
And I know we're getting a little closer on time. Is there anything that you want to tell any of the readers or the fans, or something that you want to discuss that we didn't yet?
I mean, I just thank all the readers for reading the books. I also thank, the librarians and teachers have been really supportive of our series and acquiring it for their libraries so that, their students can have them and check them out. And I really appreciate that. When I designed the series, one thing that was important to me was that the first two books Beast Boy and Raven can be read in either order, because they take place simultaneously in two different locations. And I did that because it's very, I would hear all the time when I did Beautiful Creatures, people would say, I really want to read the series, but number one is always checked out. So I thought if there's two books they could start with, it would be easier, because, I know as a library, you can't buy 10 copies of one book. So I just thank all the librarians and teachers, and I thank the readers for giving it a chance. Because I love it. I love reading them. Gabriel, what about you? Anything we didn't cover?
No, I think that's it. I'm just really excited for our next book, Teen Titans Robin. Hopefully we can show more pages of it in the future. No, in the near future.
It has a lot of surprises.
Yeah, right.
I know I'm looking forward to seeing more of it, especially since we got a taste of that character in Beast Boy Loves Raven. So now one of my last questions for you guys is that I listened to some other interviews that you guys did, and I tried to read some articles. And one thing that I think you both mentioned was that you were inspired by video games. So I'm curious what kind of gamers you guys are.
My husband is a producer. He makes video games, and my brother does too. So my husband's worked on everything from like Spider-Man movie games and Tony Hawk. And my brother does Call of Duty and Fallout. I think for me, the main thing that I take away from, I mean, I like video games where there's a story, like honestly, I really like race car games, but I don't think those are very inspirational. I like to race when I play, but I like games that have a story where there's, kind of like an adventure and stuff. What about you, Gabriel? You play more games than I do.
I love video games. It's what I do when I'm not drawing. I am very interested in story-driven games. So I am more of a RPG kind of guy. So I love Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, Persona, all of those that are really, really focused on a narrative. Like you have to like the characters, you have to like the story, not just the gameplay.
There are some games that are so well done that it is like watching a movie that you get to interact with.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. I absolutely love it. It's basically a movie that you interact with sometimes.
And are there any other inspirations that you guys have for your graphic novels or really anything else you've done? Like anybody or anything?
Oh yeah. I mean, so many creators. I read a ton. I read a ton of novels. I read a ton of graphic novels and comics. I follow just on Pinterest and Instagram, different types of artists. Some are abstract artists, some are portrait artists. And it's interesting because sometimes, like I have a painting right there. Sometimes I'll follow someone's art and I'll just like a color, like I'll be like, I love the way they use color. And sometimes Gabriel will send me like like an illustration that looks like it's like from a beautiful children's book. And he's like, look at this palette, look at the colors on this. So I feel like I draw inspiration from everything. I'm very visual.
All the creators that I follow on social media, I think I would recommend you to follow because I love their work and they inspire me every now and then.
Sounds like you both are big fans of Pinterest.
And Instagram.
And Instagram.
Instagram and Pinterest, looking at pictures.
And you both have Instagrams that you can follow because I went on and followed you guys before I got on the interview. So
yep.
You want to see more of their work, follow them on Instagram.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so very much for this was a fantastic panel and really interesting. I love having both the author and the illustrator on at the same time because as you all illustrated, well, no pun intended there, as you spoke to the fact that it's a very collaborative work when you're doing a graphic novel, which is really interesting. Very different than a lot of other things that people have or that teens are reading. So Shelby, Cami, Gabrielle, thank you so very much for participating. It's been so joyful to listen to you. And audience, thank you for your time and your attention today. Please do not forget to vote, audience. Voting is currently open. It's at rosiebookaward.com. That's ROSIE bookaward.com. So sorry, the bell just rang at my school.
It's all right.
We're at school, and so there's all kinds of interruptions. We just roll with it. So our next panel is going to be on February 3rd, and it will feature Jeff Herbach and Carrie Allen. Both of them are mostly write about sports. Carrie Allen's Rosewater book is about hockey, a female hockey player, which is awesome. And Jeff Herbach, in his wonderful, funny manner, is writing about football, but very seriously this time. It's about a young boy who gets a very serious concussion. So he has to decide what he's going to do. So both authors write mostly about sports and athletes, as I mentioned. So educators, don't forget that you can access today's session as well as previous sessions in the book festival on our YouTube site. You can just Google RosieCon YouTube and that will come up. So you can access it very simply. Videos can be used freely multiple times in classrooms and librarians with your patrons. So use them as much as you want. That's why we have the format this year that we do. Everyone, thank you again. Everyone, please be safe, stay healthy, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.